It was one of those mornings where everything felt still. Not quiet, still. Like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Spring had finally cracked through the mountain frost. Snow patches lingered in the shadows, but the air had that damp, earthy smell that only comes when the ground starts to wake up. I opened the door like I did every morning. Cup of coffee in one hand, no expectations in the other. And there she was, a lynx. I froze. Coffee sloshed onto the deck, but I didn't move. Neither did she. She stood just beyond the porch, framed by early light and pine needles, eyes locked onto mine. Not hostile, not afraid, just there. Then I saw what she held in her jaws. A cub, limp, dangling, blood on the side. One leg curled wrong. I should have backed up, gone inside, reached for the rifle I hadn't touched in months. But I didn't, couldn't. Her stare pinned me. She stepped forward. 2 slow, cautious strides. Then she gently placed the cub on the wooden boards of my porch, and backed away. Not far, just enough to give me space. Then she sat, eyes never leaving mine. The cub didn't move. For a horrible second, I thought it was already too late. I took a step forward. She didn't react. Another step. She blinked once. That was it. I crouched beside the cub. His fur was damp and sticky. His breathing was thin, just a flutter in his ribs. But it was there. Alive. What the hell? I whispered. I looked at her. She was still. Solid. Ears forward, tail flat. I didn't know what the hell this was. Didn't make sense. None of it did. But I reached down, wrapped the cub in the flannel I had tied around my waist, and lifted him gently. She didn't growl. Didn't move. I backed into the cabin, watching her the whole time. She stayed. Once inside, I set him on the couch, grabbed an old towel, turned on the space heater, cleared a table, started moving without thinking. Out the window, she was still sitting, watching. This wasn't instinct, wasn't animal logic. It was something else, and it had just arrived at my door. I didn't want this, any of it, but I carried the cub deeper into the cabin, heartbeat like a drum in my ears. His body was too light, like whatever made him wild had nearly slipped out already. I laid him on the couch, then stood there a second, just staring. What the hell was I doing? This wasn't a stray dog. This was a lynx, a wild thing, a dying one. Still, I moved, pulled the old wool blankets from the hall closet, found the space heater, dusted and dented, from under the sink, plugged it in, turned it up, grabbed a kettle, filled it halfway, set it to boil. The room filled with the scent of metal and dust and fear. The cub didn't stir. I sat beside him, watching his chest for movement. It was there, faint, shaky, but there. Outside the window, she hadn't moved. Same spot, same stillness. I picked up my phone. Signal was spotty, but I tried anyway. Dialed Clara. We weren't close anymore, but she'd spent 10 years working wildlife rehab. If anyone would know what to do, it was her. She picked up on the 3rd ring. What? Clara, it's me. I've got a lynx cub. He's injured. Bad. His mother brought him to me. Pause. Say that again? I swear. She walked up to my porch this morning and dropped him. Just stood there. I didn't touch her. I think she wants help. You been drinking? No. Just listen. He's cold. Bleeding. Not moving. I've got him on blankets. Trying to keep him warm. Okay. Heat is good. Don't feed him yet. They crash fast. Try a warm compress. Gentle around the wound if you can find it. And stay calm. Clara, he's dying. You don't know that yet. Wild ones hang on longer than you think. Just keep him warm. I'll call back. She hung up. I wrapped a towel around the kettle and placed it near the cub. The warmth seeped through the couch cushions. He didn't flinch. Didn't react at all. I leaned back, eyes on the window. She was still there. The mother. She hadn't moved. But I could feel the weight of her watching like pressure behind my ribs. She could have walked away, taken the cub into the trees to die, found a den and let nature finish what it started. Instead, she came here. To me. I didn't know what to call that, but it sure as hell wasn't instinct, and I couldn't run from it. The room felt like a held breath. The cub still hadn't moved. Not a paw, not an eyelid, just shallow, barely there breathing. I leaned over, pressing 2 fingers gently to his ribs. The rise and fall were so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. No, he was here, but he was fading. I grabbed an old jar of powdered glucose from the kitchen, left over from a failed attempt at homebrew, and mixed it with warm water. filled a plastic syringe. No needle. Kneeling beside him, I pried his jaw open just enough to slip the tip between his teeth. A few drops. No reaction. I waited. Tried again. His tongue moved. Just a flick. A twitch. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Outside, I heard movement. The mother. I stood and looked through the window. She was pacing now, back and forth near the tree line. Her muscles moved like ropes under her fur, but her ears stayed locked toward the house. She knew something had changed. I turned back to the cub. One paw trembled. Barely. A flutter. Like a leaf catching wind. Then stillness again. I took a flashlight, clicked it on, and examined the wound. Just behind the front leg, deep, raw, still seeping. I rinsed it with warm water, careful not to soak him. He flinched. That's when I knew. He wasn't gone. Not yet. He was hurting. Fighting. Silent about it like the wild things are. I cleaned what I could. Patted him dry with a flannel shirt. Rewrapped him in a towel. Turned the heater an inch closer. The storm outside was picking up. Rain had started tapping at the windows, light but steady. I moved a chair near the couch and sat. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. And then he made a sound. A breathy whine, small, strained, but real. He shifted slightly. Not much, but enough. His back leg kicked once, instinctively. I sat forward, heart in my throat. "You're still in there," I said softly. "All right." The rain thickened. Thunder rolled in the distance. The cub curled tighter into the blanket, chest rising with more purpose now. Out the window, the mother had stopped pacing. She was lying down, soaked, but still, facing the house. And I realized I wasn't alone in this. We were both watching him fight, both waiting, both hoping. Every breath was a countdown. But as long as he was breathing, we weren't out of time. By morning, I had a decision to make. I wrapped the cub in the softest towel I could find, tucked him into a plastic bin lined with more blankets, and placed it gently on the passenger seat of my truck. He didn't make a sound, but his eyes opened once when I brushed his ear. Still there. The mother wasn't outside when I left. Or maybe she was just hidden, watching, always watching. The drive to the clinic took 40 minutes. Felt like 4 hours. Clara met me at the back door. No scrubs, no clipboard, just jeans and a flannel. She took one look in the bin and blinked. "Jesus," she whispered. "I thought you were exaggerating." We moved fast. The exam room smelled like iodine and urgency. She laid him on the table. 2 vet techs appeared out of nowhere. The moment she unwrapped the towel and saw the wound, her expression changed. "That's not from a fall," she muttered. "That's a bite." "From what?" "Something big. White jaw. Clean punctures. Not another lynx. Too big. Wolf. Could be. They'll take out cubs to thin out competition. Or just because they can." My stomach twisted. She cleaned the wound, flushing it with antiseptic while the techs held him still. He squirmed a little. Not panic, more like irritation. That was a good sign. "Vitals are shaky, but holding," one tech said. Clara looked up at me. "He's lucky, or stubborn. Maybe both. Can you save him?" She hesitated. "We can try. He's got a shot. But it's narrow. He's young, wild, and in shock. No textbook covers this." I nodded. "Do what you can." They gave him fluids, pain meds, antibiotics. She stitched part of the tear, packed the rest. He didn't cry, just breathed. Afterward, I sat with him for a while. Clara stepped out to give us space. He blinked up at me, slow and tired. "You're tougher than you look," I said. He didn't blink again, just kept staring, calm, present. When it was time to go, Clara handed me a small bag of supplies. "He needs rest. No stress. Change the bandage tomorrow. Call me if he crashes." I nodded, carried him back to the truck. The road home felt quieter than usual. Every turn made me glance at the bin. Every bump made my chest tighten. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw her. She was lying in the same spot she'd been before, as if she'd never moved, as if she'd been waiting the whole time. I didn't say anything, just stepped out, lifted the bin, and walked toward the house. She didn't stand, didn't move, but her eyes followed every step.
If you love stories about wildlife rescue, click the subscribe button below. Here's how the button looks on different devices. Every subscription helps spread these stories and raise awareness. The more people know, the more animals get the help they need. And remember, subscribing is completely free. Click subscribe now and join us in protecting wildlife.
The night settled in like a heavy blanket. Inside the cabin, I moved quietly, keeping lights low. The cub, lynx kit, I reminded myself, was curled into a tight ball in the bin beside the heater. Bandaged, medicated, still. He hadn't made a sound since we got home. But his breathing was even now. No more shallow fluttering. Just soft inhales and slow exhales. Like sleep had finally claimed him. I sat nearby, staring at nothing, one hand resting on the floor beside him. Outside, the wind had picked up again, rustling the pine branches against the cabin's roof. And she was there. I didn't hear her arrive. One moment, the space beyond the window was just trees. The next, she was there. She stood in the same spot she'd always chosen, just beyond the reach of the porch light. Her body low, head angled toward the cabin. I stepped to the window, careful not to cast a shadow. She saw me. I know she did. But her eyes weren't searching for me. They were locked on something else. I turned. The kit had shifted slightly in his bin, pressing against the towel. She made a sound then, a low, deep hum. Not quite a growl. Not quite a purr. Just vibration. A mother sound. I opened the door. Cold rushed in. I stepped onto the porch, kept my distance. She didn't move. "He's sleeping," I said. My voice sounded wrong in the stillness. She lowered herself to the ground, folding into a crouch. Her chest rose and fell in slow, quiet rhythm. And then she lay her head on her paws. That was it. No approach. No demand. Just presence. I sat on the top step, arms wrapped around my knees. We didn't look at each other. Not directly. There was nothing to say. No way to say it. An hour passed. Then two. The moon climbed higher. The air bit colder. She didn't leave. Didn't sleep. Just stayed there. Breathing. Waiting. I checked on the cub every half hour. Still resting. Still warm. Still here. And every time I returned to the porch, she was watching. Not me. Him. I wondered what it took for an animal like her to come this close to a man. To trust him with something this small, this broken, this important. But there were no answers in that kind of silence. Only the truth that passed between eyes. We waited together, her and I. For what, I didn't know. But it felt right. Like this is exactly what waiting was supposed to look like. It was only a matter of time before someone noticed. The cabin sits back from the main road, surrounded by trees and quiet. But even here, word travels. Fast. First, it was Pete. Showed up in his mud-splattered Jeep, windows down, cigarette clenched between his teeth. "You know there's a lynx sitting in your yard, right?" "I know." He frowned. "She's been there for days. You planning on doing something about it?" "I already did." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. He shook his head, muttered something about lunatics with cabins, and drove off. 2 days later, Morales showed up again. This time, she didn't knock. She waited by the truck until I stepped outside. "You've got neighbors calling," she said. "Let me guess. The lynx. They say it's dangerous. That she's aggressive. That she's stalking people. She hasn't left the tree line. She's wild. That's enough for some people." I sighed. "She's not a threat. She's a mother." Morales glanced toward the trees, where the lynx lay in the tall grass, half hidden but obvious once you knew where to look. "Mike, I want to believe you, but this isn't a storybook. A wild cat on someone's property ends in one of two ways, and both involve tranquilizers." I didn't respond. She lowered her voice. "You've got 3 days. After that, state wildlife's coming, and they won't ask questions." Inside, the kit was asleep again. He stirred when I opened the door, blinking up at me with those wide gold eyes. He didn't flinch anymore. Not when I picked him up to change his bandage. Not when I cleaned his face. He leaned into me now, trusted me. That trust hurt more than I expected. He still limped, but he moved, played even, swatted at the edge of a rug, pounced on a pillow. He was healing, growing, and every time I looked out the window, she was still there, waiting, watching, always present, but never pushing. She never tried to come closer, never tried to break in, never made a sound. She just waited. The people outside didn't understand, couldn't. They wanted her gone because wild things scare them, because they don't fit inside fences or rules or neat little categories. But that kit, he wasn't just hers anymore, and neither was the silence between us. I sat on the porch that night, listening to the insects hum and the trees whisper. The lynx was a shadow at the edge of the yard, still as ever. She wasn't mine, but she wasn't only wild anymore either. Somehow, without words, we'd both crossed a line. And now I didn't know if either of us could go back. 3 days. That's what Morales had given me. What the state would honor. After that, they'd come with tranquilizers or bullets. And I couldn't let that happen. So I made my choice. At dawn, I wrapped the kit in a thick towel and tucked him inside the same plastic bin I'd used to carry him to the clinic. He was stronger now, squirmy, alert, already trying to climb out. "Easy, bud," I whispered. "Just one more trip." I strapped the bin into the passenger seat, grabbed my coat, and drove. Not far, just to the old logging road that wound behind the ridge, where the trees grew close and deep and few people bothered to go. We hiked the rest. He clung to me, small paws digging into my jacket, his head swiveling at every sound. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough. Took an hour to find her. She was waiting, not pacing, not hiding, just standing in a shaft of light beneath a broken pine. As if she'd known the time had come. I stopped 20 feet away, set the bin down, opened it. The kit didn't bolt. He stepped out slow, cautious. His nose twitched. He looked back at me once, then forward. She moved. 2 steps. 3. She met him halfway. Their heads touched. Brief, gentle. She licked his forehead. He leaned into her chest, and my heart cracked. I thought she'd take him then, turn and vanish into the trees, reclaim what was hers. But she didn't. She looked at me, long, steady, no fear, no demand. Then she nudged him, soft, deliberate, back toward me. He resisted, just a little, then turned around and walked to my boot. Saturday. I didn't move. She stood there another moment, then turned. No rush, no drama, just quiet footsteps into the trees. Gone. The kit stayed at my feet. I knelt, hands shaking, and pulled him close. He didn't fight it. We sat like that for a long time, in the quiet, in the space she left behind. She could have taken him, but she didn't. She chose. And somehow that choice felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. 2 months. That's how long it's been since I last saw her. The forest shifted in that time. Greener, louder. Spring gave way to early summer, and the days stretched longer than they should have. The kit, he's not really a kit anymore, grew fast. Bigger paws, stronger shoulders. His gait more confident, even if he still limps a little. He roams more now, never far. Always within the edge of the yard or just into the trees. Comes back when he hears my voice. Or maybe just when he wants to. He sleeps on the porch when it's warm. Inside when it rains. Eats what I give him, but he still hunts. Instinct's still there. He's not tame, but he's not wild either. He's something in between, and so am I. I still wake in the night sometimes, certain I've heard something. Branches shifting, breath in the dark, paws on pine needles. By the time I look out, there's nothing, but he hears it too. He'll lift his head, ears forward, eyes sharp. Not afraid, just alert, waiting. Sometimes I think it's her, checking, watching, making sure her choice still holds. Other nights, I wonder if it's just the wind, memory playing tricks. Either way, the space she left behind hasn't filled. It just changed shape. Neighbors stopped asking. Morales never came back. Maybe they think the lynx is gone. Maybe they believe I made the whole thing up. Doesn't matter, because I know what happened. I live with the proof. He climbs my furniture, hunts mice in the shed, presses his nose to the windows when the owls call. And sometimes, when the moon is full, he sits at the edge of the yard and stares into the woods. Long, still. I sit beside him, say nothing, because there's nothing to say. This story doesn't have a neat ending. No big conclusion. No answer that makes sense. Just this. A mother brought her broken cub to a man, and left with nothing. But maybe not really nothing, because in that space she vacated, something else grew. Not quite human, not quite wild. Something between. And sometimes, that's the only place anything real can live.